The forest had always been a sanctuary, a place of whispering leaves and dappled sunlight. It was a haven where the creatures of the woods lived in harmony, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of pine and earth. Birds sang their melodious tunes, and the rustling of leaves created a symphony that calmed the soul. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, and the worries of the world melted away. Now, it was a raging inferno. The once tranquil forest was unrecognizable, consumed by flames that reached hungrily towards the sky. The fire crackled and roared, a monstrous entity that devoured everything in its path. The heat was intense, radiating waves of blistering energy that made the air shimmer and distort. The once green canopy was now a sea of red and orange, a hellish landscape that seemed to have sprung from the depths of nightmares. Trees, once proud and ancient, were reduced to smoldering skeletons. Their branches, which had once reached out like welcoming arms, were now twisted and blackened, stripped of their leaves and life. The ground was littered with ash and debris, the remnants of what had once been a thriving ecosystem. The forest floor, once soft and covered in a carpet of moss and fallen leaves, was now a barren wasteland, scarred by the relentless advance of the flames. The air was thick with smoke, choking the life out of everything it touched. It was a suffocating blanket that blotted out the sun and turned day into night. The acrid smell of burning wood and vegetation filled the nostrils, making it hard to breathe. Visibility was reduced to mere feet, and the world beyond the immediate inferno was shrouded in a dense, impenetrable fog. The smoke stung the eyes and burned the throat, a constant reminder of the destruction that was unfolding. The sky itself seemed to rain fire, embers swirling down like a macabre snowfall. Each ember was a tiny spark of destruction, capable of igniting new blazes wherever it landed. They danced in the air, carried by the wind, a relentless shower of fiery death. The once clear blue sky was now a canvas of dark, ominous clouds illuminated by the glow of the flames below. It was as if the heavens themselves were weeping tears of fire, mourning the loss of the forest. Mira, her heart pounding against her ribs, sprinted through the undergrowth. Her lungs burned with each breath and her legs felt like they were made of lead, but she couldn't stop. She had to keep moving, had to find a way out of this nightmare. The flames roared around her, a constant threat that seemed to be closing in from all sides. Her mind raced, filled with thoughts of survival and the desperate hope that she could escape the inferno. Fear, sharp and cold, lent speed to her steps. It was a primal instinct, a driving force that pushed her beyond her limits. Her heart raced, and adrenaline surged through her veins, giving her the strength to keep going. Every step was a battle, every breath a struggle, but she couldn't afford to slow down. The fire was relentless, and she knew that if she faltered, it would consume her. Beside her, her younger brother Tim coughed, his small hand clutching hers with surprising strength. His face was streaked with soot, and his eyes were wide with fear, but he didn't let go. He trusted her to lead them to safety, and she couldn't let him down. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise that they would make it out of this together. The bond between them was unbreakable, forged in the crucible of their shared ordeal. Their village, nestled deep within the woods, was gone, swallowed by the flames. The homes they had known, the places where they had played and grown, were now nothing more than charred ruins. The memories of laughter and joy were overshadowed by the devastation that surrounded them. The village had been their world, a place of safety and community, and now it was reduced to ashes. The loss was overwhelming, a heavy weight that pressed down on their hearts. The heat was unbearable, licking at their skin like 1,000 tiny claws. It was a constant searing presence that made every movement a torment. Sweat poured down their faces, mixing with the soot and grime, and their clothes clung to their bodies, soaked through with perspiration. The heat was a living thing, a malevolent force that seemed determined to break their spirits. But they couldn't give in, they had to keep moving, had to find a way to survive. Behind them the roar of the fire echoed, a hungry beast devouring everything in its path. It was a relentless pursuer, a force of nature that showed no mercy. The sound was deafening, a constant reminder of the danger that was closing in. The fire was alive, a creature of destruction that consumed everything in its wake. There was no reasoning with it, no way to stop it. All they could do was run and hope that they could stay ahead of its ravenous advance. They had to escape, had to outrun the inferno that seemed determined to consume the world. Every step was a race against time, a desperate bid for survival. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, was now a death trap, and they had to find a way out. The fire was everywhere, a wall of flames that threatened to cut off their escape. But they couldn't give up. They had to keep going, had to find a way to survive. But where could they run when the world itself was burning? The fire seemed to stretch on forever, an unending sea of flames that consumed everything in its path. The forest, their home, was gone, and there was no safe haven in sight. The future was uncertain, and the only thing they could do was keep moving, keep fighting, and hope that somewhere, somehow, they would find a way to survive. The sky rained fire, and their only choice was to run and hope for a miracle. Terror lent wings to their feet. The forest, once a sanctuary of life and tranquility, had transformed into a hellish landscape. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Every step was a gamble, every breath a struggle. The crackling of the fire was a constant reminder of the danger that loomed over them, threatening to consume everything in its path. They dodged falling branches and leaped over fiery crevices that snaked across the forest floor. The ground beneath them was unstable, shifting and cracking as the fire devoured the roots of ancient trees. Each leap was a desperate attempt to stay ahead of the inferno, to find a path to safety amidst the chaos. Each breath was a victory, each step a testament to their will to survive. Their faces, streaked with soot and sweat, bore expressions of grim determination. The heat was unbearable, searing their skin and making every movement a painful effort. Yet, they pressed on, driven by the primal instinct to live. The firelight painted their faces in an eerie orange glow, their shadows dancing grotesquely behind them. The flickering flames cast long, twisted shapes on the ground, creating a surreal and nightmarish scene. It was as if the forest itself had come alive, its once gentle spirit now a malevolent force. "Mira!" Tim gasped, his voice hoarse with smoke and exhaustion. "I can't anymore!" His legs felt like lead, his lungs burned with every breath. The relentless pace and the oppressive heat were taking their toll, sapping his strength and willpower. She squeezed his hand, her own fear momentarily forgotten. Mira's grip was firm, a lifeline in the midst of the chaos. She could feel his desperation, but she also knew that stopping was not an option. They had to keep moving, had to find a way out of this inferno. "We have to, Tim, we have to keep going." Her voice was steady, filled with a resolve that belied the terror she felt inside. She knew that their survival depended on their ability to push through the pain and fear, to keep moving forward no matter what. Ahead, through the smoke and flames, she saw it, a glimmer of silver, like a beacon of hope. The river. The sight of the water filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. It was their chance, their only chance, to escape the relentless fire that pursued them. With renewed determination she pulled Tim along, her lungs burning with every breath. The river was their salvation, and she was determined to reach it. Every step brought them closer, but the fire was relentless, its roar growing louder as it closed in on them. The roar of the fire seemed to intensify, urging them onward. It was as if the flames themselves were alive, chasing them, pushing them to their limits. The heat was suffocating, the smoke blinding, but they could not afford to stop. They burst through the last line of burning bushes and stumbled onto the riverbank. The sudden change in scenery was jarring, the coolness of the riverbank a stark contrast to the inferno they had just escaped. They had made it, but the danger was far from over. The air here was marginally cooler, the smoke thinner. It was a small respite, a brief moment to catch their breath and gather their strength. The river offered a glimmer of hope, a chance to escape the relentless fire that had consumed their world. Collapsing onto the damp earth, they lay gasping for breath, the inferno raging on behind them, a nightmare come to life. The ground was cool and soothing against their scorched skin, a welcome relief after the searing heat of the forest fire. They had escaped its clutches, for now. The fire still raged, but they had found a temporary sanctuary. The river was their lifeline, a barrier between them and the relentless flames. But they knew that their journey was far from over. But what awaited them in the ashes of their world? The forest, once a vibrant and thriving ecosystem, was now a charred wasteland. The future was uncertain, and the path ahead fraught with challenges. But for now, they had survived, and that was enough. They found refuge in a shallow cave overlooking the river. The cave, though small and unassuming, provided a much-needed sanctuary from the chaos outside. The gentle sound of the river flowing nearby was a stark contrast to the turmoil they had left behind. It was a place where they could momentarily forget the horrors that had driven them there. A place where they could feel a semblance of safety. The fire raged for days, consuming everything in its path. Trees that had stood for centuries were reduced to ash in mere moments. The air was thick with smoke, making it hard to breathe, and the sky was painted an ominous shade of red. The once vibrant forest was now a hellscape with flames dancing wildly, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. The fire seemed almost alive, a beast that devoured everything it touched. Mira and Tim huddled together, their fear a palpable presence in the darkness. The cave's walls seemed to close in on them, amplifying their anxiety. Every sound, every rustle of leaves outside made them jump. They clung to each other, seeking comfort in their shared terror. The darkness was oppressive, and the silence was only broken by their whispered reassurances to each other. They were alone, but at least they had each other. They scavenged for berries and roots, their stomachs gnawing with hunger. The forest, once a bountiful provider, now seemed stingy and unyielding. Every berry they found was a small victory, every root a lifeline. They had to be careful, for not everything in the forest was safe to eat. Their survival depended on their ability to distinguish between the nourishing and the poisonous. It was a harsh lesson in the fragility of life. One evening, as the sky bled into shades of orange and purple, Mira heard it. The colors of the sunset were a brief reminder of the beauty that still existed in the world, even amidst the devastation. The sky was a canvas of hope, but it was also a prelude to the encroaching darkness. As the last light of day faded, Mira's senses heightened, and she strained to hear the faint sound that had caught her attention. A whisper, faint and chilling, carried on the wind. It was as if the forest itself was trying to communicate with her, to warn her of something. The whisper was barely audible, but it sent shivers down her spine. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a ghostly murmur that filled her with unease. The wind, usually a comforting presence, now felt like a harbinger of doom. It spoke of a power, ancient and terrible, unleashed upon the forest. The whisper carried tales of a force that had been dormant for centuries, now awakened and hungry. It was a power that had no regard for life, a force of nature that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The forest, with its ancient trees and hidden secrets, had always been a place of mystery. But now, it seemed to be a place of danger as well. It spoke of the Witch of Blackrock Mountain, a name that had been whispered in fear for generations, a name that conjured images of dark magic and malevolent intent. The mountain, shrouded in dark clouds, loomed ominously in the distance. It was a place that few dared to venture, a place where the witch was said to reside. The stories of her power and cruelty were enough to keep even the bravest souls away. The villagers in hushed tones had always spoken of the witch. Around campfires and in the safety of their homes, they shared tales of her dark deeds. She was a figure of fear and fascination, a legend that had grown with each retelling. The villagers believed that she had the power to control the elements, to bend nature to her will. They spoke of her with a mix of dread and reverence, always careful not to say her name too loudly. A being of immense power, they said, who lived in a fortress of obsidian high on the mountaintop. The fortress was said to be impenetrable, a dark and foreboding structure that stood as a testament to her power. It was a place where no light could penetrate, a place where shadows reigned supreme. The villagers believed that the witch drew her strength from the mountain itself, that her magic was intertwined with the very rock and stone. They whispered of her cruelty, her magic as wild and unpredictable as the forest itself. She was said to be capable of great and terrible things, her power as untamed as the wilderness that surrounded her. The forest, with its hidden dangers and untold secrets, was a reflection of her own nature. The villagers feared her, but they also respected the raw power she wielded. She was a force of nature, as unpredictable as the wind and as relentless as the fire. But Mira had never believed, dismissing it as mere folklore. To her, the stories were just that, stories, tales told to scare children and keep them from wandering too far into the forest. She had always been skeptical, preferring to rely on what she could see and touch. The idea of a witch with such immense power seemed too fantastical, too far removed from reality. But now, she was beginning to question everything she had ever known. Now, as the wind carried the witch's name to her ears, a chill ran down her spine. The whisper was no longer just a sound, it was a message, a warning. Mira felt a sense of dread settle over her, a fear that she couldn't shake. The stories she had dismissed as mere folklore now seemed all too real. The wind's whisper was a reminder that some legends are born from truth, and that the witch of Blackrock Mountain was not just a tale but a very real threat. Days turned into weeks. The fire finally abated, leaving behind a desolate wasteland. The air was heavy with the stench of ash and decay. Determined to find answers, Mira decided to seek out the witch of Blackrock Mountain. She had to know why their world had burned, why their lives had been turned to ashes. "It's too dangerous, Mira," Tim protested, his voice shaking. "We should stay hidden, wait for help." "Help isn't coming, Tim," Mira said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. "We're all that's left, and we deserve answers." Her brother looked at her, his eyes wide with fear and uncertainty, but he knew as she did that there was no other choice. They were alone, adrift in a world that had been ripped apart. The quest for answers, however perilous, was all they had left. Blackrock Mountain loomed on the horizon, a jagged scar against the desolate landscape. Its peak, perpetually shrouded in storm clouds, seemed to pierce the heavens. The journey was fraught with peril. The once familiar forest paths were gone, swallowed by the fire. They walked for days, their clothes ragged, their bodies weary. The air grew colder as they approached the mountain. The remnants of the forest gave way to a barren wasteland of rock and ash. A perpetual twilight reigned, the sun a pale ghost behind the ever-present clouds. They took shelter in the ruins of a crumbling stone tower, a remnant of a time before the fire. As the wind howled around them, Mira felt a growing sense of dread. The mountain seemed to press down on them, its shadow a suffocating weight. It was a place of secrets, ancient and terrible, and they were venturing deeper into its heart. The air crackled with an otherworldly energy. Blue flames danced around the base of ancient stone towers. The towers, etched with strange symbols, hummed with a power that felt both alluring and dangerous. This was Ethel, a land suspended between reality and myth.
Among the bustling marketplace and vibrant tapestries, I felt strangely drawn to the flames. I've always been different. A strange energy pulses within me, making me a curiosity in our quiet village. Little do I know, my life is about to change forever.
Mira's fingers tingled with anticipation. The air around the towers hummed, whispering secrets in a language she couldn't understand. It was a call, a siren song beckoning her toward a destiny she couldn't yet comprehend. Mira had always felt different. Visions of blue flames and ancient symbols haunted her dreams. Her grandmother, a woman steeped in the lore of Ethel, recognized the signs.
The fire within you, it's a gift, Mira, but also a burden.
Mira's companion, a mischievous but loyal young man named Finn, sensed her unease.
Don't worry, Mira, we'll face whatever comes together.
Despite Finn's reassurances, Mira couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Whispers followed her through the crowded marketplace. Eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear observed her every move. One night, a figure emerged from the shadows of the blazing towers. Tall and imposing, with eyes that burned like embers, he radiated an aura of both power and danger. This was Kaelin, the enigmatic guardian of Ethel's secrets.
Fear warred with curiosity within me.
Kaelin's voice, deep and resonant, seemed to echo within her very soul.
The flames have chosen you, Mira, but power without control is a dangerous thing.
Kaelin became her mentor, pushing her to her limits in a whirlwind of grueling training. He taught her to harness the flames, to control their fury, and to bend them to her will. But his lessons went beyond the physical, forcing Mira to confront the darkness that lurked within her own heart. Kaelin's trials were legendary in their difficulty. He challenged Mira physically and mentally, pushing her to the very edge of her limits. She battled fiery beasts, navigated treacherous illusions, and faced her deepest fears in the heart of the blue flames.
With each challenge, I grew stronger. The flames that once intimidated me now responded to my touch. I discovered a wellspring of power within myself, a force that was both exhilarating and terrifying.
Through it all, Finn remained her steadfast companion. He offered words of encouragement, a listening ear, and a reminder that even in the face of extraordinary power, kindness and compassion were her greatest strengths.
As I delved deeper into my training, I began to notice a strange familiarity in Kaelin's teachings. It wasn't just the techniques or the discipline he instilled in me. It was something more profound, something that tugged at the very core of my being. Every lesson felt like a memory, every instruction like a whisper from a distant past. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had walked this path before, that Kalen and I were connected in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. His words, his movements, even the way he spoke of the flames. It all resonated with whispers of my own forgotten past. It was as if each gesture, each phrase, was unlocking a part of me that had been dormant for so long. The flames he conjured seemed to dance in a pattern I recognized, a rhythm that echoed in the depths of my soul. I felt a deep, inexplicable connection to the power he wielded, a connection that went beyond mere student and teacher.
One night, as the blue flames danced and crackled, Kalen revealed a truth that shattered Mira's world. The night was serene, the air filled with the soft hum of the flames, and it was then that Kalen chose to unveil the secret he had guarded for so long. His voice was steady, yet there was a weight to his words that hinted at the gravity of what he was about to disclose.
I was not just a student to him, but family, a descendant of the very people who had first harnessed the power of the blue flames. The revelation was overwhelming. It meant that the bond I felt with Kalen was not just a figment of my imagination, but a real, tangible connection rooted in our shared ancestry. I was part of a legacy, a lineage that had been entrusted with the sacred knowledge of the blue flames.
And he, her ancestor, bound by duty to guide her. Kalen had taken on the role of mentor not just out of obligation but out of a deep-seated sense of responsibility to his lineage. He was more than a teacher, he was a guardian of their shared heritage, a protector of the ancient secrets that had been passed down through generations.
The revelation shook me to my core. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, altering my perception of everything I had known. The realization that I was part of something so much larger than myself was both humbling and empowering. It gave new meaning to my training, a purpose that transcended personal growth and touched upon the very essence of who I was. It explained the strange connection I had always felt to Kalen, the echoes of the past in his teachings. Every lesson, every moment spent under his guidance now made sense. The familiarity I felt was not just a coincidence but a manifestation of our shared history. It was a bond that had been forged long before I was even born, a bond that had now come full circle.
She was part of something ancient and powerful, a lineage that stretched back to the very origins of Ethel. This lineage was not just a family tree but a tapestry of power, wisdom, and responsibility. It was a legacy that had shaped the course of history, a legacy that now rested on her shoulders. Mira understood that her journey was just beginning, and the path ahead was illuminated by the blue flames of her ancestors. With understanding came a terrible truth. The flames, while a source of immense power, came with a heavy price. They were not just a source of energy but a force that demanded something in return. Kalen, consumed by his own past, urged Mira to embrace the flames' full potential, to harness their strength without hesitation, even if it meant sacrificing her compassion. He believed that true power required a heart of stone, a willingness to forsake one's softer emotions.
I can feel the power, but at what cost? Is it worth losing a part of myself?
Mira found herself torn between her mentor's teachings and her own compassionate heart. The flames called to her, promising strength and control. She could feel the seductive allure of the flames' power, the intoxicating promise of control and dominance. It was a siren's call, hard to resist, the intoxicating promise of control and dominance. But with every step closer to the flames, she felt a part of her slipping away. But she also saw the toll it had taken on Kalen, the way it had hardened him, leaving him isolated and alone. His eyes, once full of life, now seemed empty, the way it had hardened him, leaving him isolated and alone. The flames had given him power, but at the cost of his humanity.
I don't want to end up like him, so alone and hardened. I want to keep my heart, my compassion.
Finn, ever perceptive, saw the conflict brewing within Mira. He knew the dangers of the path she was on.
Don't let the flames consume you, Mira. They promise power, but they take more than they give. True power lies in kindness, in using your gift to help others, not control them. Remember, the greatest strength comes from within, from a heart that remains true.
The climax of Mira's journey came in a trial designed to test not her strength but her spirit. She faced a choice: unleash the full fury of the flames, mirroring Kalen's path, or find a different way, a path of compassion and healing.
This is my moment of truth. Which path will I choose?
As she stood at the precipice of decision, her grandmother's words echoed in her ears.
The fire within you is a gift, Mira, but also a burden.
Mira looked from Kaylin's hardened features to Finn's worried face, and the answer became clear. Mira took a deep breath, the blue flames reflecting in her determined eyes.
I will not be defined by the darkness of the past or the allure of absolute power. I choose a different path, a path of healing and hope.
With newfound clarity, Mira reached out to the flames, not with a desire to control, but to heal. The flames responded, not with roaring fury, but with a gentle warmth. They flowed through her, a cascade of energy that soothed and mended.
Let these flames heal and bring comfort.
She healed the sick, mended broken spirits, and brought light and warmth to the darkest corners of Ethel. People flocked to her, drawn to her compassion and the gentle power she wielded. Kaylin watched, a flicker of something akin to hope in his eyes. He had been so focused on the flames' destructive potential that he had forgotten their capacity for healing.
Perhaps there is another way.
Mira's choice was a powerful reminder that true strength lay not in dominance but in compassion. As Mira embraced her role, she felt a surge of emotions. The weight of her responsibilities was immense, but so was the sense of purpose that filled her heart. She realized the true legacy of the blue flames. They were not just a source of power, but a symbol of something much deeper and more profound. It wasn't about power or control, but about hope, healing, and the potential to bring light into the darkest of places, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The flames represented resilience, the ability to rise from the ashes and rebuild stronger than before. She had found her purpose, a calling that transcended her own desires and ambitions. Not in the flames themselves, but in the way she chose to use them. She understood that the true power lay in her intentions and actions, but in how she chose to wield them. With every flicker of the blue flames, she made a conscious choice to bring warmth and comfort rather than fear and destruction.
The flames are a beacon of hope, a guiding light for those lost in the darkness. Not a weapon of destruction. They symbolize peace and the promise of a better tomorrow.
With Finn by her side, and a newfound understanding of her own power, Mira felt invincible. Together, they were a force for good, ready to face any challenge. Mira set out to change Ethel for the better. She walked with determination, her heart set on making a difference. She taught others about the true nature of the flames, emphasizing compassion and understanding. Her lessons were not just about control, but about empathy and connection.
Thank you, Mira, for showing us the way. Your wisdom and kindness have touched our lives in ways we never imagined.
She built bridges between communities, fostering unity and cooperation. Her efforts brought people together, creating a tapestry of shared dreams and mutual respect. The flames, once a symbol of fear and destruction, were now a beacon of hope, a light that guided people through their darkest times, a testament to the power of one person's choice to embrace kindness over power, healing over destruction. Mira's legacy was one of love and compassion, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can ignite great change.
We will remember your legacy, Mira. Your light will continue to shine in our hearts and guide us.
And so, Mira, the girl who was once an anomaly, became a legend, her name whispered on the wind, her story told in hushed tones around campfires. Alongside the dance of the blue flames, her legacy lived on, a testament to the enduring power of hope and the human spirit. The courtyard shimmered under the silver light of the full moon. The night was serene, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves and the distant hoot of an owl adding to the mystical ambiance. The moon hung high, casting an ethereal glow that made the courtyard look almost otherworldly. Mira, a young witch with hair like spun gold, danced among flickering flames. Her movements were fluid and mesmerizing, each step a testament to her deep connection with the elemental forces. The firelight played off her hair, making it seem as though she was crowned with a halo of light. Her hands moved with practiced grace, weaving patterns in the air. Each gesture was deliberate, a dance of fingers that seemed to draw power from the very air around her. The patterns she created were intricate, almost like a language of their own, speaking to the flames and commanding them to dance with her. Each motion conjured a new fiery creation. Sparks flew and coalesced into shapes that flickered and danced before dissolving back into the night. It was a display of raw, untamed magic, a testament to Mira's skill and her bond with the fire element. A playful phoenix took flight, its wings leaving trails of embers. The bird soared high, its fiery plumage lighting up the night sky before it swooped back down, circling Mira in a display of loyalty and affection. The phoenix was more than just a creation, it was a companion, a guardian born of Mira's magic. A mischievous imp, formed from crackling energy, danced around her feet. Its tiny form was a bundle of energy, darting here and there, leaving trails of sparks in its wake. The imp's antics brought a smile to Mira's face, its playful nature a stark contrast to the serene night. Mira giggled, her laughter echoing in the stillness of the night. It was a sound of pure joy, a melody that blended with the crackling of the flames and the whisper of the wind. Her laughter was infectious, a reminder of the simple pleasures of life and the magic that flowed through her veins. She loved the warmth of the flames, the way they responded to her touch. The fire was not just a tool or a weapon, it was a living entity, a friend that she could communicate with. The flames danced to her tune, their warmth a comforting embrace in the cool night air. They were her companions, her confidants in the solitude of her secluded tower. In the quiet moments when the world seemed far away, the flames were her solace. They listened to her unspoken thoughts, their flickering light a constant presence in her life. The tower, ancient and weathered, stood tall against the backdrop of the night sky. Its stones, worn by time and the elements, held stories of generations past. It was a place of power, a sanctuary where Mira could practice her craft away from prying eyes. It had been her sanctuary for as long as she could remember, a place where she honed her craft in secret. The tower's walls were imbued with magic, each stone a silent witness to her growth and her struggles. Here, she was free to explore the depths of her abilities without fear of judgment. But tonight, a tremor of unease ran down her spine. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, a sense that something was amiss. The familiar comfort of the flames seemed distant, their warmth unable to chase away the chill that settled in her bones. The air crackled with an unfamiliar energy. It was a sensation that set her nerves on edge, a prickling awareness that something was out of place. The magic in the air was different, foreign, and it made her heart race with a mix of fear and curiosity. It felt like something watched from the shadows, its gaze heavy and cold. The darkness seemed to press in around her, the comforting glow of the flames unable to pierce the oppressive feeling of being observed. It was as if the night itself had eyes, watching her every move. Brushing off the unsettling feeling, Mira focused on her magic. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the familiar rhythm of her movements. The flames responded to her call, their dance a reassuring presence that helped her push aside her fears. She twirled, her laughter echoing in the night, a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. Each spin was a defiance, a declaration that she would not be cowed by the unknown. Her laughter was a beacon, a light in the darkness that she clung to with all her might. Little did she know, her peaceful world was about to be shattered. The tranquility of the night was a fragile illusion, one that was on the brink of being torn apart. The forces at play were beyond her understanding, and the storm that was coming would change everything. A shadow stretched from the tree line, growing longer as it approached. It moved with a purpose, a dark presence that seemed to absorb the light around it. The shadow was a harbinger, a sign that the night was about to be filled with more than just the dance of flames. A twig snapped, breaking the silence of the night. Mira whirled around, her hand instinctively reaching for the dagger concealed beneath her cloak. The flames around her flared defensively, casting dancing shadows across the courtyard. A figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the bright moon. It was a woman, tall and cloaked, her face hidden in the shadows of her hood. "Who goes there?" Mira's voice was steady, but her heart pounded against her ribs. The woman approached cautiously, her hand raised in a gesture of peace. "Do not fear, young witch," she said, her voice a low murmur. "I come with a warning." Mira narrowed her eyes, suspicion warring with curiosity. "A warning? About what?" The woman lowered her hood, revealing a face etched with deep worry. Her eyes, the color of storm clouds, held a depth of knowledge that belied her youthful appearance. This was Lena, a fellow practitioner of magic, though her magic was of wind and whispers, unlike Mira's fiery displays. "They are coming for you," Lena said, her gaze fixed intently on Mira. "The witch hunters. They know of your powers and they are getting closer." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Mira's resolve. She had always known this day might come, but the reality of it was far more terrifying than any nightmare she had ever conjured in her mind. The shadows seemed to close in around her, suffocating her with their oppressive presence. Witch hunters, just the name sent shivers down her spine. They were the stuff of legends and horror stories whispered about in hushed tones around campfires. Their reputation for brutality was well earned, and Mira knew that if they had found her, it was only a matter of time before they closed in. They were ruthless, merciless, driven by a fanaticism that knew no bounds. Their eyes burned with a zeal that was both terrifying and unyielding. They believed they were on a holy mission, and nothing could deter them from their path. The stories of their relentless pursuit and the gruesome fates of those they captured were enough to make anyone's blood run cold. "How did they find me?" Mira whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She had taken every precaution, every step to ensure her safety. The isolation, the secrecy, the constant vigilance, it had all been for nothing. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. She had been so careful, living in seclusion, keeping her magic hidden from the world. The cabin in the woods had been her sanctuary, a place where she could practice her craft without fear of discovery. But now, that sanctuary felt more like a prison, its walls closing in on her as the threat loomed ever closer. Lena's expression turned grim. They have ways, these hunters. She had seen it before, the lengths to which they would go to track down their prey. No spell, no charm, no amount of caution could keep them at bay forever. They were like bloodhounds, relentless and unyielding, eyes and ears everywhere. They have been tracking your magic, drawn to its power. Lena's words were a stark reminder of the danger they faced. The hunters had their methods, their tools, and their informants. They could sense the magic, feel its presence, and they were drawn to it like moths to a flame. Her words confirmed Mira's earlier unease. The feeling of being watched, it had not been paranoia. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, every shadow that moved in the corner of her eye, it had all been real. The hunters had been out there, lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had been out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The realization sent a chill down her spine. She had been living on borrowed time, and now that time was running out. The hunters were closing in, and there was no escape. Suddenly, a distant sound cut through the night. The rhythmic pounding of hooves against the hard ground, drawing closer with every beat. The sound was unmistakable, a harbinger of doom. The hunters were coming, and they were coming fast. Lena's gaze hardened. "They are here." Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a steely determination that mirrored the resolve in her eyes. She had faced the hunters before, and she knew what was at stake. There was no room for fear, no time for hesitation. Panic surged through Mira, threatening to overwhelm her. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing thick and suffocating, but she couldn't afford to lose control. Not now, not when the stakes were so high. But amidst the fear, a spark of defiance ignited within her. She had come too far, fought too hard to let it end like this. The hunters might have found her, but she wouldn't go down without a fight. She would make them pay for every step they took towards her. They might have found her, but she wouldn't go down without a fight. Her resolve hardened, and she steeled herself for the battle to come. She had faced danger before, and she would face it again. This time, she would be ready. Her hands crackled with fiery energy, ready to defend her sanctuary, her life. The magic flowed through her, a powerful force that she had honed and mastered over the years. It was her weapon, her shield, and she would wield it with all the strength she could muster. The flames around her responded, growing taller, fiercer, transforming from a playful dance into a raging inferno. The fire was a reflection of her spirit, Fierce and unyielding, she would not be taken easily. The hunters would learn that she was not a prey to be hunted, but a force to be reckoned with. Of those who fought within it.